We are live.
Well, good evening and welcome to the April 14th, 2022 meeting of the Essex Region Conservation Authority Board of Directors. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start by taking a roll call of our authority members to confirm attendance. And we do not have any regrets at this time. So I will be calling out your municipality by alphabetical order. Please unmute yourself and declare that you're present. Councillor Peter Courtney of Amherstburg.
Present.
Councillor Michael Prue of Amherstburg.
Present.
Councillor Morley Bowman, Essex.
Present.
Councillor Chris Vanderdolen, Essex.
Present.
Councillor Laura Lucier, Kingsville. Okay, we will mark her just a little delayed. I'm sure she'll be on shortly. Councillor Larry Patterson of Kingsville. You're muted, Larry. Very good, present. I heard it perfectly. Deputy Mayor Tracy Bailey of Lakeshore. Present. Councillor Len Janice of Lakeshore. Oh, Len. Okay, we do not have Len. And when he arrives, I will have him declare his presence. Councillor Mark Carrick LaSalle.
Present.
Councillor Sue Desjardins LaSalle.
Present. Councillor
Trevor Jones of Leamington.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Larry Verbeek, Leamington.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Joe Bacchetti Tecumseh.
Yeah, present.
Councillor Jewan Gill of Windsor.
Present.
Councillor Vice Chair Kieran McKenzie of Windsor.
Present.
Councillor James Morrison of Windsor.
Present.
And Councillor Ed Sleeman of Windsor.
Present.
Well, thank you all. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that this land is traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island, North America, who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Please raise your hand to indicate if there are any members who may need to declare a conflict of interest. Okay, I am seeing none, so we can proceed with this evening's agenda for the Board of Directors. So the agenda for this evening, April 14th, 2022, meeting of the Board of Directors be approved. Moved by Councillor Borman, seconded by Councillor Sleeman. Anybody opposed? That is carried. We do not have any hearings. ERCF Board of Directors, the minutes of February 17th. So we're going to adopt meeting minutes here. February 17th, 2022, annual general meeting of the Board of Directors. The recommendations there and be approved as distributed. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Verbeek. Anybody opposed? That is carried. That the minutes of the March 8th, 2022, March 29th and 29th of 22 meetings of the Executive Committee and their recommendations be approved as distributed. Moved by Councillor Sleeman and seconded by Sue Desjardins. Anybody opposed? That is carried. John R. Park Homestead Advisory Board, that the minutes of the March 30th, 2022 meeting of the John R. Park Homestead Advisory Board and the recommendations therein be approved as distributed. Moved by Sue Desjardins, seconded by Trevor Jones. Anybody opposed? That is carried. Business arising from the previous minutes? None. Okay, I do have a few announcements. First, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your warm welcome that we received while presenting to every municipal council within our watershed over the past few months. I was very proud to present our budget transition plan and annual report across the region. Vice Chair Kieran, thank you for stepping in as Vice Chair when needed. And I'd like to especially thank Tim and Shelley for their professionalism and expertise. With spring finally here, there are significant activities taking place across the watershed. Development applications continue to be received at a relentless pace, and staff are working vigilantly to respond to all applications in a timely manner. In March, one of the largest prescribed burn ever undertaken in this region was conducted at the Colomino wetland, located in the Canard River watershed. As a result, native wetland species will be restored in this provincially significant wetland. Last weekend, more than 200 volunteers collected over, this is sad, 3,750 pounds of garbage from Little River in Sandwich Town in Windsor. This was part of a bi-national Earth Month cleanup in the Detroit River, and we were most pleased to lead the Canadian effort. Rotarians removed an additional 200 pounds of garbage from Holiday Beach in Amherstburg, and we are most grateful to all those who volunteered and to continue to do this in our region. Sadly, we see that much waste, isn't it sad? Trees for the spring planting program are arriving this week, and staff are gearing up to plant and distribute over 87,000 trees across the region over the coming months. We're also excited that after a 2-year hiatus, ERCA will again host the Earth Day tree planting celebration in the city of Windsor. We're thankful to NWIN, QP Local 543, Tree Canada, and the LCBO for sponsoring the trees for this event. And I hope to see you all there. So we don't have any delegations this evening or presentations, but I will acknowledge that Councillor Janice is now present. We can have that reflect. Good evening, Lynn. The municipality of Lakeshore, their SMP, their shoreline management plan. We have a report this evening. James Bryant will be presenting a report before you, and we're also joined tonight by one of the consultants who participated in this project, Peter Zuzik. Peter, thank you also for being available this evening. Mr. Bryant.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just want to make some brief remarks regarding the report. You have it in front of you. I think it summarizes quite well the joint effort that was taking place between all the stakeholders, between Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, Essex Region Conservation Authority, Municipality of Lakeshore, and a pretty large consultant team to take this work on. So it was really set up to investigate and update flooding and erosion hazard information for the various reaches, the shoreline between in Lakeshore, between the town of Tecumseh, the border there at the west, and then through Lighthouse Cove and up towards the Thames River outlet on the east. The most important part that comes out of this is really that it provides the necessary technical information that's required for Section 28 regulatory purposes that are required by both CAs, as well as the information that's required by the municipalities to review and update development policies with their official plan and the requirements of the provincial policy statement. So for clarity, what's in front of you is, ERCA administration is recommending that the technical results of the work be used as the basis for regulatory approvals and current board approved policy. So there will be future policy work that's ongoing further to this, but that policy work is going to be brought back to the board, specifically related to those things like, it's joint discussions and collaboration between the municipality and the two CAs that, are going to surround different items. Some of those items include climate change, flood levels, how those things are going to be considered in the future, how they need to be used for planning for those effects on municipal growth strategies and development related policies as a whole. So specifically, we're looking at the technical information that's required to continue doing the work under Section 28 and then using our board approved policy. As Chair Jobin indicated, Mr. Zuzik of Zuzik Inc., who is a large component of that consultant team, is with us tonight, and he's on the line with us, and he's available to make a few remarks, answer a few questions as well if required. And I believe there's a brief video that Pete's gonna walk us through. So with that, I'll hand it over to him.
All right, thank you, James. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. And just wanted to say it's certainly been an honor and a pleasure to work with Lakeshore and the Essex Region Conservation Authority on this plan. It's been an important investigation for the community, and it's one that's updating a shoreline management plan, the historic one that's many, many decades old. So it was a long overdue investigation, and one that we certainly enjoyed doing with Stantec and SJL Engineering. So there are other partners, important to recognize them. But also equally important to recognize the members of the community that came out to the meetings and gave us their feedback and were quite important components of developing the plan. So that's really the key part I wanted to mention. Happy to take any questions or comments about the plan itself. And I think, as James mentioned, we're going to launch a video here to just highlight the extent of the flood risks in this lakeshore community, which is not unsimilar to other parts of Essex region. So this is a video here, and the area in blue before we start it is all the area that is within the 100-year flood hazard limit. So that's the regulatory area that James spoke about. This is based just on historical extremes. And to help understand the extent of the flooding, we've taken all the buildings and they're extruded in this three-dimensional view. Buildings, residential buildings are pink, and then the yellow and green are commercial industrial buildings. So if we start the video, we're going to start flying through the community from Pike Creek to the east. And you'll see that, again, all the areas in blue are the areas that could be inundated during the 100-year flood level, including roads around buildings. In some cases, the floodwaters extend quite far inland, coming up to the Poos River here, and again, quite extensive flooding on the riverbanks and the lakeshore. Continue to move towards Bell River here, and we'll see that some of the development, newer development, has street flooding, as you can see a little further back from the lakeshore. Again, quite extensive building flooding and road flooding around the community of Bell River as well. See more street flooding during during this flood, during some of the newer construction. And as we get further to the east, we'll start to see more extensive agricultural flooding as these floodwaters can move inland through the homes and quite far to the south into the interior agricultural areas. Coming up to the golf course here in the Ruscombe River, a similar type of story. The floodwaters are coming over the banks of the shore protection and flooding up the river mouth as well. We're getting out to the Stony Point area. The western part of the point is a little bit better off, not as much flooding along the lakeshore. And then as we get about halfway to the point on the eastern half, again, the flooding comes back, and you'll see that the extent of the flooding is hundreds of meters and approaching a kilometer in some locations inland during this 100-year flood. Crystal Beach, Kucher Beach Road, again, a community that's under a lot of risk. And then the video ends out at Lighthouse Cove. So that's a quick snapshot. I know everyone's not 100% familiar with that community, but I think the key part of that is that there's a lot of flood risk in Lakeshore, and by contributing to this plan, and the community and the council and the staff and the Conservation Authority, now we have updated information that we didn't have when this study started, and now the community's in a position to start looking at projects to take action and start reducing some of these flood risks moving forward. And Madam Chair, that's really all I want to say. I'm happy to take any questions or comments from the audience.
Oh, thank you, Peter, for the information. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Yes, Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Gill.
Through you, Madam Chair. Pete, I was wondering if there's a cost if you were to go to other municipalities. I'm from Kingsville, and this is quite interesting to see. I just wondered if I could bring something like that back to our municipality, and maybe you could privately message me and with some type of numbers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, for sure. Councillor Patterson, happy to possibly work with the Conservation Authority a little bit and talk about that. Not something we could just provide right on the spot here, but of course.
Oh no, but it's quite interesting to see Lakeshore and running towards Bell River, then into Stony Point. That's many miles that could end up underwater.
James, Mr. Bryant?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, just building on some of that, and Peter's aware of this as well. The fact that the federal government has budgeted some funds on the order of $64 million in terms of a magnitude for the whole country, and there's some significant funding that's slated for the province of Ontario. That as a whole, we've already had some conversations about leveraging that money to see what we could do to bring some more money into this region and update some of those areas. And Kingsville would obviously be included in that. And we're going to be seeking some input and some conversations with some of the municipal partners to be involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. And Councillor Gill?
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. And Peter, just following up on James' comment, what kind of if these things is actually existing, and what kind of rectification or can cities can do to mitigate these impact?
Yeah, well, great question. And the plan really has two key parts to it. A lot of work goes into what we refer to as the hazard mapping. I think you're all quite familiar with that, looking at flood risks and erosion risks. And so a lot of effort goes into that, lots of technical work. And that's tools and products that then the Conservation Authority can use for their regulatory work, and the municipalities can use for planning purposes as well. So that's half of the piece of this large investigation. And then the other part is the shoreline management recommendations. And there is lots of information in the document about ideas and options and approaches for communities to reduce their flood risk. So we've put lots of thought into that. We have several public meetings to get feedback on the approaches as well. And we like to say that this is really just step one. So getting the plan done and getting updated mapping is a really important task. And getting the ideas on how to take action to reduce risk is an important task as well. And the next step is really for municipalities, their council, their staff, conservation authorities, and the communities to recognize they have challenges and establish priorities, and then start taking action and doing further studies, more detailed work at the local scale. So I think there's lots of things that can be done, and part of this job is to put those ideas on the table. And now it's back to you guys to decide where your priorities are and how you want to take action and do things at a more local scale to reduce these flood risks.
Thank you, Peter. No, that is true. It's need to be looked into if that is the way it happens, or we've seen the water level is going up, and that will more damage to the cities and then the residents. As even in the Windsor side, I've seen in the Riverside area, there are a lot of houses getting in that range close to Riverside area. But that is what all about. I appreciate your comments. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Bernie has some comments to add as well.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Pete and James. The interesting thing is the depiction of the extent of flooding is not new. And the depiction of the extent of flooding is a confirmation of our existing regulatory extents. And further to Councillor Gill's question, the strongest tool that's available to the municipalities is the Planning Act. And it's through the Planning Act that appropriate designations and then ultimately appropriate zoning is put into place to ensure that properties are clearly identified and that development can proceed where development is sustainable. Conservation authorities are not responsible for regulating use or use activities on property. That is municipalities. Conservation authority sets and regulates appropriate standards. If, however, properties, and through this type of a study, are identified that simply have no mechanism to meet standards, then other mechanisms have to be looked at to attempt to protect those properties. Diking, berming, walls, pumps, and or planned retreat and removal from some of those areas. So again, this is fantastic work, and I'm so thankful that Dylan's back in the mid 70s. Their estimates and some of their calculations were very, very liberal and provided us adequate levels of protection that for the years that we have been regulating development in these areas, we've been able to provide acceptable protection standards. As Pete has identified and James has inferred, addressing the impact of climate change through a planning process is a daunting challenge. And so we're going to have to consider more things as additional freeboards and or modifying levels as we continue to monitor development in these areas moving ahead. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bernie. Councillor Janice, you had your hand up. And then Kieran, sorry, did I miss you, Kieran? Well, we'll let, okay, Mr. Janice and then Mr. McKenzie. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I think it'd be fair to say that this is very enlightening to the town of Lakeshore on some of these stats and these mappings that came out to us, not only through we have a flood task force, council, and to the general public. And I think Councillor Deputy Mayor Bailey would say that a lot of the fears are that, oh, our house, we have to move it and this and that. But I think some of the fears at the end of the day may be there. But I think at the same time, at least we know we can plan ahead. I think Peter and James did a great presentation to the fact that it's not today, but it will have to be looked at. It definitely will have to be looked at. And there will be some stark decisions that have to be made, very tough decisions that will have to be made in Lakeshore. And so, it's something we had to do. We did it. And at the end of the day, decisions will have to be made. Where can you build? Where can you not build? I think some of the comments were, the Conservation Authority, here they go again. They're not going to let me do this or that. But at the same time, we're Conservation Authority in town are only enforcing the rules that the provincial government has put forward. And we have the tool of the organizations and Peter, the work they did. So I appreciate what they did. At the end of the day, not everybody's going to be happy, but those are council decisions when it comes to that. And either Peter or James can tell some time frame on that. When would even be looking at that? And I think what I heard, we're talking 2-3 years down the road. It's something that we cannot do tomorrow because the facts and figures are not totally there yet. So if there's any comment on that, time frames or the planning acts and stuff like that.
Through your chair, yeah. Thanks, Councillor Janice. Yeah, and I think, and if Pete wants to elaborate on this as well in a little bit more detail, if he needs to. I know the next step, as you mentioned, is going to be having some conversations with the municipality. A couple of years ago, the municipality of Lakeshore established that flood task force. In talking with Lakeshore administration, there's a need, and it's included as a recommendation in this report to establish a similar concept, a task team to take a look at, what needs to be done and where those things need to be done, and then at what time those things need to be done. So it's really looking at recommendations on a reach by reach basis, because I don't think it's a one size fits all in terms of these solutions. So timing is going to vary based on the solution, and that varies, I think, based on the level of risk and the associated hazard on a reach by reach basis.
Thank you, James. Kieran, you had a comment or question, and then I'll go with Deputy Mayor Bailey. Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair. Really great study. And some of the comments that we're hearing around the table, it's a bit shocking to see those images. And I just think of our own municipality and just the entire region we literally are surrounded by water. So obviously we do have a major risk of flood in literally every single municipality across the region. So I wonder to what extent this work, now that this work's been undertaken in Lakeshore, would it be fair to say that Lakeshore now is the leading community with respect to fully understanding the flood risks that they're facing with the most up-to-date data in comparison to any other municipality in the Essex County region, including the city of Windsor?
Go ahead, Tim. Mr. Bernie.
Through you, Madam Chair, excellent question, Vice Chair. Mapping and studies have been ongoing for decades, but a mapping study in the kind of holistic fashion that a shoreline management plan completes, Lakeshore and Tecumseh are probably the freshest, along with the town of Leamington. Where there's been some active additional studies taking on the problems that we have in Southeast Leamington. But the rest of the region, and I'm happy that Councillor Patterson has identified that concern, should follow suit. And as we all work through the roles and the activities that we have to deal with on updating official plans, these studies are critical to inform just exactly land use and land use designations that municipalities have to put forward, because the PPS forces municipalities to address that, new development is to be directed away from hazards. That's stipulated in the provincial policy statement. Existing development is existing development, and how it can be protected, we have to look at that in a different fashion. But the conversion of existing developments, upgrading and then extending those lifetimes in there has to be prescribed standards and prescribed protection methodologies put in place. And in many cases, single homes, single private properties, simply it's beyond the capability of a 50 or 60 or 75 foot frontage that hasn't got much depth to actually protect itself from some of this reach level flooding. And as you said, the entire region being surrounded by water, and we are extremely low lying, we have extensive floodplains all around our 150 kilometers of shoreline.
Yeah, so I'm interested to understand, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this question, but what was the process that was undertaken by the township of Lakeshore or the town of Lakeshore, excuse me, for this to proceed? Did they approach the Conservation Authority, and then we brought Mr. Zuzik's organization into as a consultancy to help with the work, or was this sort of initiated by the CA?
Go ahead, James.
Through you, Chair. Lakeshore, through the declaration of emergency. Actually, at the onset of the pandemic, there was a flood emergency that was kind of by Gordon McNamara. After that, I apologize. It sounds like my connection is unstable. So they established a climate emergency or flooding emergency, and it was a council decision to proceed with a shoreline management plan as part of their strategic actions. For the time period of their plan, which I think it was spanning to the end of 2022, 2023. They did approach the Conservation Authority, and through some collaboration, we established terms of reference for which they went forward with a proper procurement policy to establish the consultants to undertake the work.
Okay, and so understanding as I do thank you for that, through you, Chair. The geography of Lakeshore, much of it, it's along that shoreline, along the southern shore. So we saw the images that we saw along that entire shoreline. But I wonder if the study, excuse me, was undertaken in another municipality, if it would demonstrate not only the shoreline risks, and I know it's a shoreline management plan, but would you look at in different places, would you look at risks that also extend to inland bodies of water where there are potential flooding risks as a result of that?
through you, Chair. So, yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, the conservation authorities engaged in some of those activities, which includes Little River within the city of Windsor.
This is what I was thinking
Turkey
about.
Creek. Yeah, so you know that work, you got to be careful, I guess, how you start combining these types of scenarios. So you almost have to look at it as, you know, and you know, Pete can potentially even elaborate on this as well, where you know, you got to look at some probabilities of, you know, combined events and these sort of things. So, you know, the coastal event only propagates so far upstream to the inland communities and up those water courses. At some point, there's an intersection of the flood lines with respect to the riverine event, which is a rainfall driven event, not a wind driven event. And then those lines, we have to look at, you know, where that kind of separation is between a coastal event and an inland event. So and I would gather that there's cost differences associated with that type of undertaking as well. It's different type of data that needs to be done in a different type of modeling.
Okay, I think I understand that, Mr. Zuzik. If you want to add to that, go ahead. But I think I get it. Okay, well, and there's just the last question or two that I have to some of the points that you raised, Tim, around municipalities and the tools that they have. Talked about to do flood mitigation and sort of address those risks. The Planning Act and zoning and land use choices that they have in front of us and those authorities. I'm starting to think about what's happening at the provincial level with the reforms of the Conservation Authority Act, the Planning Act, and all the different things that are happening at that level. And is this something that municipalities should be concerned about if those authorities are being weakened, that it's actually creating a situation where perhaps by addressing one problem, housing, that we're creating another level of risk in another area that, you know, almost trading one set of problems off for another set of problems? Is just maybe looking for a comment there. Not to get too political.
Through you, your chair, through you, Madam Chair, there is dangers associated with, you know, some of the tweaks and some of the changes, and probably most worrisome is an imposition of an MZO that's either in a wetland area, which is a hazard area, and or into known flood-prone areas. With the passage of an MZO, though, it doesn't eradicate the municipality and the local conservation authorities' responsibilities with respect to protect people from hazards. But it gets to be very, very challenging, and it creates more red tape, actually, in attempting to protect people. The job is to protect people and their properties. So we need clarity provided from the province. We need direction from the province and upgrading of technical guides and technical standards. We don't need, you know, more cumbersome or more crazy kind of reorganization or rejigging things. We need the province to step forward and actually update technical guides, technical manuals, and do some additional provincial hazards assessments.
Maybe some infrastructure dollars would help too. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tim. And Pete and James, thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bailey.
Thank you very much. And through you, actually, Vice Chair McKenzie commented a few of the things that I actually wanted to say as well, because I was thinking about population density and what that might mean, you know, to some of these reforms and being whittled down. But the other comments that I did have, Mr. Bernie, your point was well taken around extending the timing of folks living there. I think it's going to be so important for us to be transparent, and that is a really important fact for me, because I know that we have some extremely high risk areas, and we know that they're not going to meet the standards. And so once we know that meeting the standards will be difficult, I assume that there will be federal dollars that will assist the municipality in its own state of readiness. But what I'm wondering is whether or not you've heard anything about federal dollars that would help residents to meet a state of readiness.
Through you, Madam Chair, the DMAF funding that was earmarked through federal coffers is predominantly for updating mapping and updating models. In days gone by, the province and the federal government both provided funding for actual physical work, putting, shovels into the dirt and providing some stone. But of late, the only thing that we are aware of federally and provincially is some monies coming forward for modeling and mapping updates. The only funding source right now that's available through conservation authorities is the WECI funding, but that is funding that's only for existing projects and programs that have been completed by conservation authorities on behalf of municipalities, and it's maintenance money. So there's no new money that we're aware of that's been earmarked.
Okay, so in addition, we have Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Peter, Tim, or James, we're talking about the flooding as a possibility to happen. Now, if I take a look at our municipality, and if I sound like I'm tooting my own horn for our municipality, no, that project that was done by Lakeshore has really got my mind going. From our McCain side road going west to Arner Town Line, that would be towards Essex Way. Tim would be well aware of the flooding that comes across the lake, and we're building $1 million homes over there. And so one of my main concerns is going east towards Leamington. We're all high level there, but the erosion is what's horrible. Now, Peter, is something to that type of mapping? Can you highlight erosion? Would that be something that we could ask for that to happen through Tim or whoever? Because that we seem to just be accepting it as erosion. But if you go down each year and look, we're losing lots and lots of property, and it's coming towards people's houses, and we know there's no money there whatsoever.
Peter, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Patterson. So yes, so we talk a lot about flooding tonight so far, but this plan with Lakeshore does include mapping of the erosion hazard as well. So they're typically done together, and that is certainly something that could be done throughout other parts of the community. And I think just to add to the conversation, because it's been really good discussion, we've done quite a bit of work on Lake Erie recently, in Chatham-Kent and Port Stanley and Southeast Leamington, Long Point, quite a few technical studies related to climate change as well. And I just want to add that lens has been touched on a little bit, but provincially, we're to be considering the impacts of climate change with our planning decisions right now. We're in a little bit of a state of flux with the technical guidance on how to integrate that into the mapping, as Tim highlighted. But a few things I want to just share with you, and those that are living along these lakes will know, we're seeing less and less ice cover on the lakes, and we're seeing midwinter thaws. We did get into a lockdown here later January, but recall what it was like in early January. The governments were predicting we might have one of the lowest ice covers ever in the Great Lakes, and then we got a polar vortex. So one of the things with respect to erosion and the impacts of a warming climate, and the lakes temperatures are already warming, we're going to see less ice cover. It's already happening. And that means these erosion challenges that you have are going to get worse. So simply put, if the shoreline eroded at 2 meters a year, or sorry, 2 feet a year historically, it could be 3 in the future. It could be more. So, and we've studied that quite extensively on other locations on Lake Erie and the North Shore. So I think that we shouldn't only be thinking about flooding. Certainly the erosion of the shoreline is a real threat, and one that climate change will make worse as well.
Thank you, Peter. Any additional questions or comments? Okay. So this report is that the municipality of Lakeshore Shoreline Management Plan 2022, prepared by Stantec Consulting Limited in partnership with Zuzek Inc. and ZJL Engineering, be approved for use by ERCA administration as a technical basis for regulatory approvals and ERCA policy within the study area. And further, that ERCA administration continue to collaborate with the municipality of Lakeshore regarding future policy discussions and implementations related to the above noted plan. Moved by Peter Courtney, Councillor Courtney, and Vice Chair Mackenzie. Anybody opposed? That is carried. We do have a time-sensitive matter, and since we have all members present, a couple have to leave at 7. I am asking that we make a motion to move to the budget report and then come back to BD 0522 so that we can, okay, certainly moved by Larry Verbeek, seconded by Councillor Janice. So we will come back to your report, Kevin Money. Now we're going to go into next report, the ERCA 2022 budget approval. And that is carried. Yes, Councillor Mackenzie, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, if it's okay for me to make a comment at this point, I just wanted to echo your remarks from earlier tonight, just to commend the administration, Mr. Bernie and Shelley McMullen in particular, who did an outstanding job, in my opinion, preparing this budget document for the councils to review. Extremely transparent, incredibly comprehensive, and for all of the meetings that I attended, there was maybe a question or two that came forward with respect to, how the funds are being allocated, and this whole issue of the non-mandatory versus non-mandatory services, and presenting that information in a way that was understandable and, as I said again, transparent, I think was absolutely outstanding, and really served our purpose as Conservation Authority moving forward in terms of being able to work in partnership with our municipalities. I think set us up in a very good way for future budget discussions when it may become more challenging with respect to the MOUs that have to proceed. So I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Bernie, Ms. McMullen, and the entire administration that put all of those documents together. Thank you very much for that. And I'd certainly be prepared to move the recommendation at the appropriate time.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Vice Chair. So as we move to approve the 2022 budget, any outstanding questions can be addressed by Tim Bernie or Shelley McMullen. And I would like to remind members that voting with respect to levy contributions, it is recorded and a weighted majority vote. Weighted vote simply means that municipalities that contribute a higher levy based on current value assessment or CVA have a higher percentage of the votes. But even if a municipality has more than 50% of the CVA, their combined votes cannot exceed 50%. So we will begin by municipality with Amherstburg. And so when I call your name, I will need for you to state your vote if you agree to approve to the budget presented. Begin with Councillor Peter Courtney, Amherstburg.
Support.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Sir, my apologies. Yes, who said that? I am so sorry, Councillor Sleeman. Certainly go ahead.
It's really simple question. I understand that the budget is going up approximately 85,684. This is to all the municipality. That include that the inflation, that include the all the costs due to the pandemic. So the overall is 85,000, or represent about, what is it, 2.5%?
Yes. Yes, certainly. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to be sure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Janice.
I think Councillor Mackenzie made the motion. I'll second the motion before it goes to a vote.
Okay, very good. So now we have Councillor Michael Prue of Amherstburg.
Support.
Thank you. Councillor Morley Bowman of Essex.
Support.
Councillor Chris Vanderdolen of Essex.
Support.
Councillor Lucier still has not joined us. So now we have Councillor Larry Patterson of Kingsville.
Support.
Deputy Mayor Tracy Bailey of Lakeshore.
Support.
Councillor Len Janice of Lakeshore.
Support.
Councillor Mark Carrick of LaSalle.
Support.
Councillor Sue Desjarlais of LaSalle.
Support.
Councillor Trevor Jones of Leamington.
Support.
Deputy Mayor Larry Verbeek of Leamington.
Support.
Deputy Mayor Joe Becchetti of Tecumseh. We will come back to him. Deputy Mayor Becchetti. And then so we have Councillor G. Gill of Windsor.
Support.
Vice Chair Kieran McKenzie of Windsor.
Support.
Councillor Jim Morrison of Windsor.
Support.
Councillor Ed Sleeman of Windsor.
Support.
And myself, Tanya Jobin of Tecumseh, I support. I'm not sure if Joe's having technical difficulties.
Madam Chair, we had missed Councillor Dane Malik from Peely.
My apologies, Dane. Go ahead.
No problem. I support.
Fantastic, thank you. But Deputy Mayor Becchetti here. I am not certain. So I guess we already have a mover. So I would ask administration to confirm results of the weighted vote.
Thus far, 100% in support. Missing two councillors, Joe Becchetti and Laura Lucier.
Okay. So the ERCA budget has been approved. We do already have a mover, Vice Chair McKenzie, and a seconder of Councillor Janice that the 2022 draft budget totaling $9,009,117,058 receive final approval by way of recorded and weighted vote in accordance with Regulation 13996, and further that the total municipal levy of 3.5, representing an increase of 2.5%, be allocated and collected in accordance with respective municipal CVA percentages as provided by the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry, and as presented in the attached 2022 municipal levy allocation table. Moved by Vice Chair McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Janice. Is anybody opposed? Well, that is carried. Thank you to everyone, and again to administration as well. And so to those who do have to leave, by all means, as you are ready. And we will now go back to report BDO 522, which is the Ontario Community Environmental Fund. Kevin Money is available to answer any questions from the members. Yes, I'm sorry, Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Ms. Chair, and just a question and comment first is I think it's a good we got the grant, and I'm just looking from Kevin that the time framing for finishing that 6 out of 9, when is that all the 9s are going to be finished?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. The construction is allowed to start again after July 15th of this year. That's when the windows open up for in-water works, and they'll continue until probably the end of the year again. At this point, we're having some preliminary discussions with the engineer and the contractor to see if they are able to complete the job in full within this calendar year. So I don't actually have a good answer for you right now. It's not quite clear. It's still a little early in the season. And like I said, those meetings are actually happening on Tuesday to figure out what the plan is and the construction and when they're going to be starting up for the season. But our desire is to complete this project. But this project has a great deal of constraints with it, working in an aquatic environment and with all the barging of the stone and material that has to happen to this site. So we may be extending into next year if the contractor can't finish this year.
Okay, thank you, Kevin, for the info.
Okay, thank you. So yes, Vice Chair McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Kevin, this is good news. With the 60K, does that offset or does that add to the to some of the work that could be undertaken, or does that offset costs that would and what if it does offset some costs? What happens with the 60,000 then, in terms of the variance that it would create?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. The intent is that these are additional dollars, so we can build more with it. So the goal is to build additional habitat and additional shoreline protection with these funds. Absolutely.
That's great. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So that the board direct administration to enter into a contribution agreement to receive the amount of 60,000 in grant funding from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation Parks towards the Peche Island Erosion and Habitat Creation Project. Moved by Councillor Gill, seconded by Mark Carrick. Anybody opposed? And that is carried. Okay, and now we're going to reports for information. The Turkey Creek Hydrologic and Hydraulic Module or Modeling Project Update. Tian Martin and James Bryant can answer any questions regarding this report. Do we have any questions or comments for administration? Okay. Oh, yes, Councillor Carrick. And then Vice Chair McKenzie.
Yeah, sorry. So just through you to Mr. Bernie, can you just review the timelines and what this actually means to us? Thank you.
Through your worship, James is best equipped to answer the question with regard to timing, but where we find ourselves with it right now and the reports that we have out, it allows some other studies that have been temporarily stalled to get kicked back into gear. But James be best to advise on timeframes and timetable.
Through your chair, yes, certainly. Actually, Mr. Bernie, I think adequately stated it there, which would, the objective was to reinvigorate some of these other studies, namely the Howard Buford study through the LaSalle region. So, and Tien has been a little bit more involved, in the trenches with some of these various studies. But what I can say is that we've had some conversations with municipal staff, both LaSalle and Tecumseh, and they're reigniting those other studies. We have a level of confidence right now that some refining is going to happen in that modeling work, but we're fairly confident with what we're seeing that the next steps can be taken with respect to those studies on the fringes.
Sir, okay, thank you. We certainly appreciate that because the Howard Buford one is huge for us. So certainly appreciate that and all the good work you guys have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I did see, was it Vice Chair McKenzie? Did you have a question? Go ahead.
I did. Thank you, Chair. And obviously, to Councillor Carrick's point, there's a lot of us that are very interested in this Turkey Creek work. So I guess understanding that we've got some extensions in front of us for some of the work that we've already undertaken. I'm just wondering, on the bigger picture, some of the grant funding that we've applied for recently, there was a successful round and then a couple of unsuccessful applications that went forward for some of the infrastructure work. I wonder to what extent any of this work is impacting anything else anything that we'd like to be undertaking in the, let's say, short to medium term.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor McKenzie, just looking for a little bit of clarification on that matter. And I'll just start by saying, yes, we did, we were successful in receiving some NDMP funds related to Turkey Creek in terms of WECI applications right now for infrastructure work that might be related to the Grand Maris drain through the city of Windsor. And that was a few years ago. We were unsuccessful in obtaining those funds through our WECI application. But if there's something more there that I may not be touching on, please feel free.
No, I'm just interested in understanding whether or not, so the assumption that I've been under is, thank you for that, and through you, Chair, is that we're going to sort of continue to do some of that infrastructure work, that hard infrastructure work in through that entire corridor as some grant funding becomes available, or we're successful in obtaining it. And I'm just trying to understand the connection between this report and any of that, if there is any connection, I guess, this report and the studies that are being undertaken and our opportunities to be able to leverage some of those grant opportunities that may or may not be coming forward.
Sorry, you want to respond?
Through you, Madam Chair, the most significant and immediate impact on the Turkey Creek analysis is on the town of LaSalle. Falling back from that, as James has alluded to as well, we had on the books applications on behalf of the city with the province for WECI funding for significant concrete works and concrete repairs on the Grand Marais Drain. In conjunction with that, there was also some outfall and outlet application works, again, further up, moving on Turkey Creek Grand Marais Drain. Within the city of Windsor, the most significant impact on all of that, though, goes right back to the central pond and everything upstream of the central pond. So understanding right now and finalizing this assessment right now gives us current data, current flow, current confirmed elevation data within Grand Marais Drain Turkey Creek to allow further assessments and further refinements of projects and funding to take place. But the immediacy of what we're looking at and the most critical impact would be on LaSalle and getting this complete. There are some planning initiatives and some development initiatives within the city that tie into the outcome of this study. But the most immediate impact would be on LaSalle in being a downstream receiver.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Bryan, Mr. Bernie. Thank you, Chair.
Certainly. James, you had another comment, and then Mr. Sleeman has a question.
Certainly, thank you through your chair. I just adding on to what Mr. Bernie indicated there. I can also say that the Grand Marais channel, there was a municipal drainage report done a few years back, and one important thing to come out of this too is that has been integrated into the full Turkey Creek watershed modeling, and it's confirming a lot of the information that came out of that report as well, which is your guiding principle on your infrastructure improvements through that area as it is. So with that major concrete channel through that span.
Okay, very good. Councillor Sleeman.
Yes. Thanks, Tanya. I think my question is really to Tim Bernie. If you can refresh our mind on one of the things in the past, anytime the board passed the budget, and I know our decision is final, nobody can overrule it. That's number one. That's great. But also, after the budget is being passed, the ERCA, maybe yourself, will be sending letters to all the municipalities. And on top of that, usually the secretary treasurer like yourself would attend individual municipal meeting actually to be there, not asking permission, but at least to explain if there's any question. Is it going to be the same process? In other words, you will be going to different municipalities if they have any question. Just kind of a good gesture. Are we still doing it?
Through you, Madam Chair. The most recent round of meetings was specifically with that intent. And that was the purpose of us going through and ensuring that we attended every municipal council before the vote this evening on the budget, and was to clarify what's any questions with your administrations, any questions that council had. So we over the last 2 years, we've made sure that we got in that 30-day notification period to present to council and then to respond to any questions. So that was the sole reason to have all of those meetings that we had in that somewhat hurried fashion that we did. So yes.
So Tim, you're referring that the budget before it passed by ERCA board, usually you go to different municipalities to answer a question, or after it passed?
Through you, Madam Chair, the purpose was all those meetings that we have just completed. We did that to inform so that coming in, the board is informed that we have attended with all municipalities, and municipalities have been given the opportunity to raise questions, comments, concerns. And if there was any questions, comments, and concerns raised by municipalities, we would have been presenting that to the board this evening.
Yeah, Tim, thank you for explaining it. For some reason, I thought after we pass it, then we go there and not explain things, but ask if there's any question to clarify things. But I think you are right. Maybe before we pass it, we go to different municipalities. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks, Tanya.
Yes, for sure. Yes, Councillor Sleeman, we did just come and we came to Windsor on a number of occasions. If you recall, we were deferred once and then had to come back. And at that time, your council and administration reviewed all the details and information that we've discussed as a board. And then your council would have given you direction at that time saying, no, we don't, take it back to the board. So that was why you all came here tonight prepared with the decision to support. We're good? Yeah, test. Got a little mute there. Sorry about that. Okay. My screen jumped. Okay, so on this report, BD 0722, be received for members' information. This is the Turkey Creek Hydraulic and Hydrologic Modeling Project update. We need a mover. Moved by Trevor Jones, seconded by Sue Desjardins. Any questions or comments? That's opposed, or that's carried. Opposed. Tricky. Oh, shoot. My screen is jumping around for some reason. It keeps going back up to page 1. So now we have BD 0822, Township of Pelee Island, Development and Safe Access During Times of Flooding. Any questions or comments? And James is here to answer anything. I am currently seeing none, so we need that moved. Deputy Mayor Bailey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bichetti. Anybody opposed? That is carried. BD 0922, Draft Inventory of Programs and Services. Again, James Bryant is available to address any questions or comments regarding this report. Does anybody have any they would like for to ask James or anything? Okay, so that report BD 0922 be received for information, moved by Deputy Mayor Verbeek, seconded by Councillor Vanderdolen. Anybody opposed? That is carried. BD 1022, Watershed Management Services Activities Report for February and March 2022. Again, James Bryant can answer any questions regarding this report. Do we have any for James? Okay, so on this report, the review of regulations. Yes, Councillor Janice.
I move it.
Seconded by Councillor Patterson. Anybody opposed? That is carried. BD 1122, Detroit River Canadian Heritage River 10-year report. I'd like to invite Danielle Stubing to introduce this report for us this evening. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it's hard to believe that it's been more than 20 years since the Right Honourable Herb Gray and Minister of Canadian Heritage Sheila Copps joined local dignitaries to designate the Detroit River as a Canadian Heritage River. For those of you who were there, you may remember that our current CAO, Tim Bernie, led several hundred guests in singing O Canada on this momentous occasion. The Walpole Island Singers led a drum circle in celebration of Indigenous stewardship, while tall ships from across North America provided a spectacular backdrop. This designation was the culmination of more than 4 years of research, partnerships, and community collaborations to ensure the extraordinary cultural heritage and recreational values upon which the river was designated would be conserved, interpreted, enhanced, and appreciated. While the river's biological significance is of note, its status as an area of concern under the Canada-US Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement prevented the river's natural heritage values from being included in its nomination. In fact, it's timely because tomorrow actually marks the 50th anniversary of the signing of that historic agreement, which identifies 14 beneficial uses that must be restored in order to remove an AOC identification. But ERCA regarded this as an opportunity. And when we embarked on the community effort to achieve designation, the river's profile and value were raised, and we collectively believed that this prestigious status would result in enhanced stewardship of the river. And there's no question that the communities surrounding the Detroit River have delivered on their commitment to stewardship. In fact, in this last decade, 4 more of those beneficial use impairments have been reclassified as not impaired. A net increase in natural habitat has been achieved, and the river is well on its way to being delisted as an area of concern. It was quite remarkable to see the hundreds of actions that the community has come together to undertake over the past decade, cataloged in one report. And Madam Chair, we'd like to recognize Gina Panunzio, ERCA's Coordinator of Partnerships and Outreach, who took a lead role in the research and community consultations required to prepare this report. Projects for the river have ranged from community celebrations like riverfront festivals, cleanups and tree planting events, art installation, fishing derbies, engineering work such as shoreline softening and fish habitat construction, to massive projects like that being undertaken on Pesh Island. This report has determined that the values upon which the Detroit River was designated remain intact, and through the efforts of many, significant and measurable improvements have been made toward the river's natural heritage values since designation. The report has been submitted to the Canadian Heritage Rivers Board for review, and we're confident that the Detroit River is most worthy of continued designation as a river of national significance within the Canadian Heritage River System. Thank you for the opportunity to present these findings, and I'm pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Danielle. Any questions or comments for Danielle? Yes, Vice Chair McCarron.
Thank you, Chair. Loved reading this report. Really excellent work, and all of the history that's referenced in it, and the work that's been undertaken by so many people. I think you're, the recognition of the area of concern as the opportunity that it was, I think, is bang on, and people did rally to that and rallied around that. So the question that I have is, once the approval goes forward, as I think it will, I think the report makes it almost irrefutable. What would because I think this report is incredibly important, something that we would want to share widely across the community. So I wonder what type of activities that we have planned once the report is the designation is reaffirmed, that we would undertake to sort of inform the community about what's happened.
Certainly, thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, once we've heard back from the Heritage Rivers Board, this report will be widely circulated amongst all municipal partners and promoted, because it is really exciting, as you said, Vice Chair Mackenzie, to really put into context all of the things that have been done by so many to ensure that the designation is protected. And so we'll embark on a celebration tour, if you will, and make sure that all of these actions that have been taken for the river are widely celebrated.
Thank you for that. Thank you for all the work that's been undertaken to yourself, by yourself, and anyone else who's been involved in this. Really, really excellent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I can't agree with him more. Thank you, Danielle. So on this report, we need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Gill, seconded by Trevor Jones. Anybody opposed? That is carried. BD 1222, Essex Region Conservation Foundation 2021. I was pleased actually for the opportunity to attend the Essex Region Conservation Foundation's annual meeting in March and to extend on behalf of the board our sincerest appreciation to the foundation's members and its many donors. As you'll see in tonight's gratitude report, which is attached, nearly $583,000 was raised for conservation efforts last year. There's also a short video of highlights that we're going to share. And Tim or Danielle, if you'd like to add anything before we share a short video accompanying the 2021 annual report, please do so.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. It is something else, the engagement that we are fortunate to have with our foundation and those people that have come forward to work with us for those fundraising activities. As we move through our transition planning and as we move through ultimately to 2024 budgeting, some of the non-mandatory activities, if this board deems that we are to still be engaged with it, subject to member municipalities wishing us to, the foundation will play a pivotal role in securing funds, either through sponsorship, private donation, or other works. And so it's an exciting time, and there's more to come with it, and we should be excited about what's going to fall out of it. I want to really acknowledge too as well Danielle's work with the foundation. Also, Nicole is always available and working hard and diligently with the foundation. And Shelley historically has done great work with everything financial with the foundation. So with that, I can hand it off to Danielle to play the video if Danielle has a couple of comments.
Since a picture is worth 1,000 words, I'm happy to share this video.
Thank you, Danielle. May I have a motion to receive this report? Moved by Dane Malik, seconded by Mark Carrick. Anybody opposed? That is carried. We have environmental registry reports, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Nope, we have 4. The Conservation Ontario comments and regulatory and policy proposals, the expanding administrative penalties, the sub watershed planning guide, and municipal wastewater and stormwater management. Motion to receive these reports. Moved by Councillor Sleeman, seconded by Councillor Prue. Anybody opposed? That is carried. We do not have any correspondence or committee of the whole. Is there any new business any members wish to address? No. Oh, yes, Councillor Janice.
Thank you. Listening to the report tonight about how many more trees and that kind of thing. I certainly know that with the City of Windsor's program over the years, Malden Park and the Little River area, the contributions of the authority and the whole community, Essex County, everything. I mean, we've all shown up, the tree planting and that. Is there anything that each municipality, we're 7 members, that how would we go about tree planting in all our communities and having a celebration similar to Windsor does and that. Would that be municipality driven, or is there a way that dates could be set up through ERCA with individual municipalities to, because I personally have talked to different organizations, businesses and that would probably donate, would like to get behind it with whether there's employee groups, because I know employee groups, Boy Scouts, clubs, Girl Scouts, and whatever other groups get behind the City of Windsor one. And in the county, I think there's a lot of groups too, but just how do we pull that together? And whether that, I'm asking for a report. I certainly know you don't have answers tonight. So whether I need to notice a motion for that, or just on a question that you could come back to another meeting and recommend how we would do that, how Lakeshore, LaSalle, whoever, that we could establish dates. And I know that even the school kids would love to get out planning in Lakeshore, but who would coordinate that? ERCA or the municipality themselves? So a question.
Sure. I'm going to give you a little response just in reference to what we do at our at the town of Tecumseh is our Parks and Rec department. They have selected some dates, and actually in each ward, we select either this fire station or a park or parkette within our municipality, and that ward member determines, and then a date is selected. Members of council and public and media attend or don't attend. But if anybody else, administration wants to add to that.
Madam Chair, Danielle can address special plantings and events coordination.
Thank you very much, and through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, we're happy to partner with every municipality to work to undertake these types of tree planting events. In fact, the town of Amherstburg reached out to us this year, and we are working with the town of Amherstburg on April 23rd. These are coordinated through our community outreach and partnerships coordinator. The City of Windsor planting has been taking place for many of years because there have been a lot of businesses who have contributed the funding to support the trees with the request that the trees be planted in the City of Windsor. So certainly, Councillor Janice, if you know businesses who would like to fund trees to be planted in the town of Lakeshore, absolutely reach out to me at any time, and we're happy to set those up within our team. But they are typically funding contingent and also land contingent. The City of Windsor Forester has been wonderful in working with us over many of years to help find land to conduct these sorts of large scale tree planting activities on. Of course, there's lots of logistics when it comes to finding parking and all of these sorts of things, but we can certainly get into any details, reach out to us at any time, and we're always happy to support getting more trees in the ground.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And certainly, believe me, I have not, it's not a slight against Windsor. They do a great job. I've attended a lot of them. It's just that I think, and I'll take you up on that offer, and maybe we can have a discussion with Lakeshore, because certainly the size of Lakeshore, there's certainly a lot of areas we could plant trees in. Thank you.
And thank you. So under new business, I do want to add one thing, and I would need support from the board and administration. It's just in referencing Councillor Sleeman's inquiry earlier. If it is the wish of the board administration, we could just send a letter to each municipality to be received in their communications, just stating that unanimously the budget was supported by board members. Thank you for the partnerships, and we continue to work together collaboratively. Councillor Patterson, and then Councillor McKenzie. Go ahead, Larry.
Oh, Madam Chair, I would make that motion if you couldn't.
Fantastic. So motion by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Vice Chair McKenzie. Anybody opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, then in other business, the next meeting of the ERCA Board of Directors will be held on Thursday, June 23rd, starting at 6 via Zoom web conferencing. I'd like to remind board members as well that our regular meeting tonight is followed by a meeting of the Essex Region Source Protection Committee. Please don't leave when this meeting is adjourned, as we'll be moving directly into that meeting under the same link and everything. So may I have a motion, please, to adjourn April 14th, 2022, regular board meeting. Moved by Councillor Jones and seconded by Councillor Janice. Anybody opposed? That is carried. Okay, so now I invite Mr. Firth and Katie Stamler to the meeting. Welcome and good evening. I'm going to take a moment to confirm that there has been a couple of changes to our attendance from the ERCA board meeting this evening before we convene. Councillor Bowman did leave us, as well as I believe Councillor Desjarlais did, and Laura still has not made it with us this evening. Does that sound correct, Danielle? Does anybody else recognize any changes? Okay, then that is noted. Once again, please raise your hand or indicate if there are any members who need to declare a conflict of interest. I'm seeing none. So now we can proceed with this evening's agenda for the Source Water Protection meeting. I need a mover for this agenda this evening, April 14th, 2022. Essex Region Source Protection Authority be approved. Moved by Councillor Gill, seconded by Deputy Mayor Verbeek. Anybody opposed? That is carried. Minutes for approval, Essex Region Source Protection Authority, that the minutes of the November 18th, 2021 meeting of the Essex Region Source Protection Authority be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. Moved by Councillor Vanderdolen, seconded by Councillor Sleeman. Anybody opposed? That is carried. That the minutes from October 13th, 2021, December 8th, 2021, and February 9th, 2022 meetings of the Essex Region Source Protection Committee and the recommendations therein be approved as distributed. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Carrick. Anybody opposed? That is carried. We don't have any additional delegations, but we do have Committee of the Chair Tom Firth and Project Manager Katie Stamler. They're both here tonight and they're going to be presenting their report to the board. Thank you both for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Tanya. Does my mic work? Because my camera doesn't.
We certainly hear you. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, good. Thank you for the welcome. And as soon as I get my notes up here, I will introduce this. You know what? I do this all my life and I have all trouble always with this.
That's okay. Tim always does it too. So you're good.
Off the cuff, I think. Katie, I heard Dr. Stamler's deep intake of breath as I said that. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for hearing us tonight. This committee constitutes a Source Protection Authority, and once a year around this time you have you are required by the Clean Water Act to file a report with the ministry regarding the progress of the Source Protection Plan. And so in getting ready for that, Source Protection Committee has worked with Dr. Stamler and her staff to develop a recital of the works that have been done during the year, and it includes some of the stuff that might appear in budgets for next year or the next year after that, or studies that might need to be done. In other words, the plan will still grow, even though we're reporting on we're simply reporting on the progress to date and the status of its implementation. The committee is in good shape. It seems to have stabilized the membership. If you recall, over the past few years, we've always come to you with a new appointment, a replacement or whatever, but our current committee is working very well together. No problem with attendance at meetings, and are doing good work with us. They're contributing. So with that short introduction, in the plan that you have before you, in the report you have before you, that is, in the first section, there's general comments from the committee about the progress and the work that's being done. The more detailed stuff follows, and I would invite Dr. Stamler to help us with pointing out specific things in the report.
Thank you, Tom, and through you, Chair. As Tom said, this is really our opportunity to share with you the progress and highlight our successes of the last year. And the reporting period for us is the calendar year, so January 1st through to December 31st. And the report you have has two of our annual reports on it. The first, as Tom mentioned, is the Source Protection Authority Annual Progress Report. This is required to be submitted through the Source Protection Authority to the Ministry of Environment, and it's a prescribed template. And then the other report you have is our risk management report. And as you know, ERCF provides risk management services on behalf of municipalities in order to implement certain policies within the Source Protection Plan. So we provide that much more detailed report on the work that the risk management official has done. And this year, the risk management official has got us within just 2 remaining existing threats that need to have risk management plans established. And those are nearing completion now. And with that, and with the completion of a review for any additional existing threats, probably in just a couple of months, we will have all of the policies in the Source Protection Plan considered to be fully implemented. So that is big and good news. We also want to point out that the municipalities have continued to remain really active partners in source protection. They complete a screening tool. We provide training for them every year to make sure that that screening tool is still working and making sense. And that helps us to identify any new potential drinking water threats. And the committee also wanted to acknowledge the work that municipalities have been doing towards completing their official plan reviews, knowing that the pandemic has created some challenges with public consultation. We are happy to see that some of that has gone forward, and I know I've reviewed some drafts for a couple of these, so we're excited to see the official plans come to completion. A couple of exciting and new things that we've been working on. You know that harmful algal blooms are identified as a drinking water issue for Lake Erie intakes, and our committee has received the beginning steps. We have to go through a very rigorous process for identifying drinking water issues. So we discussed that in the fall for identifying microcystin as a drinking water issue in Lake St. Clair for our drinking water intakes in Lakeshore, where they have very much a realized problem with harmful algal blooms and very high levels of microcystin in the raw water. So we're working closely with the Ministry of Environment and with the town of Lakeshore on that. And we also invite you, if you haven't seen it, the committee produced a fun road sign video. We did a bunch of selfie videos. All the committee members went out with assigned lines and went out to the various road signs to help educate the public about what these road signs are all about. And just to leave you with a note that 2022 is going to be a busy year for source water protection. We were waiting on the director technical rules to come out, which arrived at the end of 2021. And that will drive the work that we have to complete in 2022. And we have a rather aggressive work plan. So you'll be hearing some more new and exciting things going on in 2022. Thanks.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Stamler and Mr. Firth. Is there any questions or comments for either of our delegations today or members? Yes, Vice Chairman McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair Katie, and Tom. Thank you very much, or Dr. Sandler, excuse me. Thank you very much for your work. This is an important area, obviously. Question I have, I want to understand better the authority that your committee has. I know it's called the Source Water Protection Authority, but once you identify those risks and you start to sort of work with the stakeholders who are involved in terms of whether it's a business or a producer or the municipality, where does that actual authority lie in terms of enforcing or bringing forward the remediation or the whatever action that you're recommending. Once you come to, we would like to see whatever thing proceed. How does that go forward? And it perhaps it's different depending on the organization and the thing that it might be, but I'm just trying to understand where the type of authority that you actually bring into these types of discussions with the groups that you engage with.
Yeah, for sure. So those policies where we're establishing risk management plans, they're executed by a risk management official, and the risk management official is technically a compliance officer under the Clean Water Act. So there's a few of us that are designated as risk management officials at the Conservation Authority. So we have that ability under the Clean Water Act to, we can issue orders, which we did have to do this year because we had some properties where we had a lot of, we didn't have any returned communication. We can order a thing to be done and various other things. We normally don't have to do that. Normally, the way the process works is that we make connection with the landowner or the person engaged in the activity. And for us, that's large fuel tanks. It's always large fuel tanks. So we make connection with that individual landowner or maybe the property manager. And it's very much a negotiation process. We provide them with the template of what the risk management plan looks like. And the risk management plan has, we specify the risk management measures that we need to see. And we give them we do a lot of it, for them. We provide them with a template of each of those different appendices so that they can adapt it for their property. So we're looking for things like, what fuel tank is on site? Where exactly is it? What is the volume of it? Do you have proof of adherence to the current rules and regulations that are in place for fuel tanks? Do you have proof of employee training? Do you have proof of spot checks and that sort of thing? So it's all stuff that they're already supposed to be doing under TSSA and other pieces of legislation. So this document is just a place to collect all of that. And then we have, once that risk management plan is established, then we're just beginning the compliance phase now. So now we can go back and do sort of a self-assessment where they say, yes, we are continuing to do all of those things.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And just to be clear, this is similar to what, the role that the Conservation Authority undertakes. We're not creating the legislation. We're out there enforcing the regulations that have been brought forward by the province. So right. I think sometimes some folks maybe don't quite understand that distinction. And I think it's an important one to reiterate. Thank you for your work.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Prue?
Yes, just a question about the algal blooms. It's my understanding that a lot of that is caused by runoff, fertilizer runoff, and it comes from here. But the biggest source on Lake Erie for many years was the Maumee River. Mm-hmm. And is that what's causing it? And is that the same thing that's causing it in Lake St. Clair?
That is a great big question, and I spend lots of my time in lots of different sessions with lots of really important scientists working on those questions. So we know that phosphorus is the limiting nutrient. So the more phosphorus we have, the more it feeds the algae. So when we're trying to mitigate for it, we're trying to reduce the amount of phosphorus and other nutrients that are put into the lake so that we can reduce the size of the blooms. There are many other factors at play as well. There's change in water temperature with climate change that these particular algal species prefer. We have, changes in timing of when the nutrients are coming out. We have changes in the form of the nutrients that are being delivered. So there's a lot of factors at play that are causing the blooms to happen in the first place, and then dictating the size and severity of the bloom and the toxicity of the bloom. In Lake St. Clair, the nutrient delivery comes from the Thames River and from the St. Clair River. And it also has to do with the hydrological processing in Lake St. Clair. So the way that Lake St. Clair's, the water moves in Lake St. Clair it tends to sit in the southern part of Lake St. Clair, which is against our shore. So that water is the oldest part. And so it allows the algae to have time to bloom. So the bloom that happens there really sits for a long time right against our shores, where in Lake Erie, you have a little bit more movement going on. And that's why in Lake St. Clair, you don't see a bloom on the US side. And it did take us a little bit of fighting and being a little bit noisy to make sure that people acknowledged that Lake St. Clair actually does have recurrent annual persistent algal bloom. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? I am seeing none. And this just disappeared. Tom's glitch came through onto mine. That's what I believe. Minutes note, here we go. So now on the 2021 Essex Region Source Protection Authority Annual Progress Report be submitted to the MECP on or before May 1st, 2022, pending suggested changes and additions made by the SPC. And further that the 2021 Risk Management Services Annual Progress Report be received for information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Verbeek, seconded by Councillor Sleeman. Anybody opposed? That is carried. Again, thank you, Dr. Stamler and Mr. Firth, for everything you both do for us. Committee of the Whole, there is none. Correspondence, email from the Honorable Dave Piccini, MECP Minister's Annual Report on Drinking Water 2021 and 2020-21 Chief Drinking Water Inspector Annual Report, date December 23rd of 21, that this correspondence be received for members' information. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Janice. Anybody opposed? That is carried. Is there any new business that members wish to raise? Okay, we are seeing none. The next meeting of the Essex Region Source Protection Authority will be held at the call of the chair. Now, so that we are at the Thursday, April 14th, 2022 meeting of the Essex Region Source Protection Authority Board of Directors be adjourned. Moved by Councillor Courtney, seconded by Councillor Vanderdolen. Anybody opposed? Well, that is carried. So this concludes all of the meetings for this evening. Again, I thank you everybody for your attendance. Hope everybody has a fun, healthy, safe Good Friday and Easter weekend. Take care.